All right. Chapter 3, non-renewable energy sources. This is the lecture on it. It'll go with the slideshow. So hopefully you can pay attention and gather what we talk about in class. Fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are formed by the decays of plants and animals. These decays have been buried in the ground for many millions of years. Fossil fuels right now is what we rely on. Okay. It is the source of majority, if not over half of our energy sources. There are three types of fossil fuels. One is coal, the other is natural gas, and the third one is oil, also known as petroleum. Now we're going to take a look at coal first. This is a picture of a piece of coal, standard looking coal, basically black or brown in color. And it has been our electricity source, our heating source for many, 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 many years. We get our coal by mining it out of the ground. Okay. We have to dig it out. We have to strip it from the land. We have to do it one of two ways. Like I said, it's our major source of energy. Now, what are the ways we can obtain coal? I just talked about it just before. The first way is surface mining. Here's a picture of surface mining. It's an ugly looking thing. Basically, they're just scraping off the top surface, filtering through, and it's what it's really all it is, surface mining. Okay. That's one way. The best thing I can think of is if you go up to up by Duluth, there's a lot of this, Duluth, Minnesota, there's a lot of this up that way. The other one is probably the most common one that you hear about. It's deep mining. Okay. Basically, you're pulling pillars. You're digging holes, pulling pillars, transporting it back up above ground. But this is the one that's probably the most common. You hear about it the most. Probably the most dangerous one out of the two. Now, what are the five types of coal? Here are the five types of coal. You have peat, lignite, subbituminous, bituminous, and anthracite. Now we're going to go through what each one of these represents and talk about what they do. The first one is peat coal. There's a picture of it. It's formed from the water and the decomposition of organic materials. It's very soft, very brittle. Looks like mud, so to speak, but just a little bit harder. Lignite coal contains some wood decomposition, has a higher energy content. Okay. Subbituminous. It is 200 million years old. It is very, very old. It's what we use as industrial fuel. This is what powers coal-fired electrical plants. It's dull black in color and it's extremely soft as well. Bituminous coal has a high carbon content, blacker in color. It's very dense. It's also used to produce electricity. So we can use both of them, subbituminous and bituminous, as an electricity source. Anthracite. This is very hard, very brittle, shiny in appearance, burns cleaner. A lot of this is found in the Pennsylvania area, but it is very heavy, very, very hard, very brittle. Now, where do we convert coal into energy? Good question. Coal-fired plant, okay? And we're going to walk through this. So your coal is going to come down through a conveyor belt into a boiler. Okay, you're going to have water lines running through. Basically, you're going to use that coal to heat up the water to turn it into steam. This steam will pass through this line right here, this pipeline, all the way over to what we call a turbine. Now, these turbines are going to spin They're going to spin a shaft that is connected to a generator. So as this steam is coming through this line and spinning the turbine, the generator is creating the electricity. Okay. Once that steam rolls through the turbines, it's going to come down to what they call a condenser, and it's going to turn back into water. And this cycle repeats over and over and over. Now, some things, some bad things about it is the emissions that come off. With EPA standards nowadays, it's not so bad. They've been able to control the harmful emissions that come out of burning coal. Advantages of coal: has a very high energy content, and right now we have plenty of it. Okay, we have plenty of it. Disadvantages of coal: dangerous to mine. That's what we're talking about. Deep mining, pulling pillars. You hear a lot of accidents about they hit a methane pocket, explosions happen. Pollution, just by burning it, you pollute the air. And with strip mining, it kind of really defaces the land. It makes it look bad. The next fossil fuel: petroleum, oil. 3 places you can find it. You can find it in large oil pockets underneath the Earth's crust. Okay, if you dig down, you're going to find it. Texas, big one. Get all the oil rigs offshore. They're digging deep into the ground. Oil shale. It's a shiny black substance. Looks like a rock. You can break it apart, and the oil will be. You can crush it and basically squeeze the oil out. Tar sand's the same way. It's oil trapped inside of sand and tar. You can break that apart and get it. But oil pockets is probably our number one place that we find oil. Now, in order to use oil, we have to go through what they call a refining process. Crude oil doesn't have a whole lot of advantages to it. So basically what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to heat this up in a fractionating tower. It's going to turn into vapor. As the vapors rise inside this tower, they're going to condense at different levels. And at these different levels, there's trays that collect the various liquids, and they make it into useful substances. The next slide will show that. Okay, this would be the inside of a fractionating tower. You see, as gases rise, they change into, you got fuel oil, diesel, kerosene, naphtha, and gasoline. But at each level, certain vapors are going to condense. Here's an example of a large fractionating tower. This is what you would see at an oil refinery. Now, advantages and disadvantages of oil. We have a limited supply. And once again, it's fossil fuels that causes pollution. One advantage to it, it has a lot of uses, and you can transport it easily. We can use pipelines, tankers, okay, semis with tanker rears on them. So easily transported throughout the United States, throughout the world. Now, natural gas, probably one that's really taking control of fossil fuels, moving up in the world. It consists of the following gases. If you were to break down natural gas: propane, which is the most abundant, butane, ethane, and methane. Now, 2 places we can find natural gas. One are geopressure reserves, also known as aquifers, and you have tight sand reserves. Geopressure reserves, in order to get our natural gas from there, we must drill into these pools underground. Once we drill through, you got gas that's trapped within salt water. Basically, relieve that pressure. Once that pressure is released, the natural gas will separate it from the brine, which is salt water. Here would be an example of a geopressure reserve. Tight sand reserves. Okay. Now, in order to get this, we must inject a high pressure fluid into the rock. Okay. Basically, gas caught in sandstone. Once we break the sandstone apart, that gas will be released. We can store it. Now, advantages and disadvantages of natural gas. Advantages, it's a very clean fuel. Once again, is also easily transported. Now, the disadvantages, it's highly explosive, okay? And sometimes it's very hard to get at. You have to drill miles into the ground to get to these things. So now with fossil fuels, you have, of course, environmental issues. Acid rain, global warming are the two major ones. Acid rain is probably not as prominent as it was in the 70s, but global warming seems to be an ongoing one, keeps becoming bigger and bigger, also known as the greenhouse effect. Okay, basically, it's just not allowing our gases that we create to escape. So basically, we're heating the earth up even more and more. And here's an example showing you how this is all coming around. Acid rain, basically, like I said, it's not probably as important as it used to be. Like back in the 70s, they were having a lot of trouble with this. Factories producing so much emissions. Basically, acid would, in the form of rain, would come down, tear apart trees, houses and stuff like that. But you're looking bigger cities. Well, that's all for chapter 3. Hopefully that'll help explain some stuff. Like I said, pay attention to the notes, write these notes down. It's very important.